Growing up in the US, you learn about the California gold rush.
Jewelry is a big business, taking in around $300 billion a year.
Tens of thousands of people have moved here to clear the land and dig for gems.
But their production can be less than glamorous.
I was 5 years old when I started working in the diamond mines.
The walls are contaminated, the surface, those blankets, the miner, the floor, essentially every square inch of this place is covered in mercury.
My great-great-great-great-grandmother hid under her mother's dead body in order to survive.
There is a general concern that, if the mercury levels get high enough and are consistent enough and prevent animals from reproducing successfully.
Queen Elizabeth II owns the largest clear-cut diamond in the world, known as the Great Star of Africa.
A recurring rumor about Elon Musk that has popped up over the years is that his wealth came from an emerald mine, as people who don't like him constantly tweet about this and use this as an example of why he is not a self-made billionaire and not someone people should admire.
Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's me here, Comrade Lavender here, and I am back with another anti-capitalism deep dive video, true crime video. Today I'm going to be doing the diamond, gold, gem, jewelry, and other mining mineral and industry files. Before we get started into this YouTube video, I'm going to put my other YouTube videos that relate to this topic on the screen right now if you'd like to check them out. So here they are if you want to check them out. So let's get started into this YouTube video. Max Rodriguez knows how exactly he's going to propose marriage to his long-term boyfriend. The only thing that troubles him is the issue of the ring. Rodriguez has heard about how diamonds fuel distant conflicts and about miserable working conditions of the miners who extract these precious stones from the earth. And he worries, I don't want a symbol of our union to also be associated with chaos, controversy, misery, and capitalism pain, said Rodriguez. The Great Star of Africa diamond is cut from a larger gem that was mined in South Africa in 1905 and handed over to the British royal family by South African colonial authorities. It is currently mounted on a royal scrope belonging to the Queen. Calls for the return of stolen artifacts have been renewed following the death of Queen Elizabeth II, British longest reigning monarchy. It is also on public display in the Jewel House at the Tower of London. It is the largest gem quality uncut diamond ever found. The 105.6 carat Colonizer diamond was mined in India thousands of years ago. It is one of the largest cut diamonds in the world. It was initially worn as a brooch by Queen Victoria and later mounted on the crowns of Queen Alexandra and Queen Mary. Elon Musk and his dad's emerald mine. Musk is far from self-made. He was born in South Africa to an extremely colonizer wealthy white family that profited off the exploitation of workers in Africa and apartheid-era South Africa. Much of his family's wealth comes from an emerald mine in Zambia owned by Elon Musk's dad. The workers in these mines are mostly black native indigenous residents of African countries, while the owners are usually descendants of rich white colonialists. Musk is not a self-made billionaire. They don't actually exist. No one's self-made. Millionaires and billionaires should never exist. A victim of capitalism, a 15-year-old shoveling in Swifting gravel in a smart Asal mines in the Southwest Democratic Republic of the Congo. Diamonds symbolize something much more immediate, the opportunity to eat. Mining work is dangerous and grueling, and he is plagued by backaches and intense pain, suffering, but that is nothing compared with the pain of seeing his family go hungry. His father is blind. His mother abandoned them several years ago. It's been 3 months since he last found a diamond, and his debts for food, for medicine, for his father are piling up. A large stone, maybe a carat, could earn him $100 at least. He says enough to let him dream about going back to school. After dropping out of school at age 12 to go in the mines, the only work available in a small village, he knows of at least 12 other boys from the same community who have been forced to work in the mines to survive. The mine, a ruddy gash on the banks of a small stream, those waters will eventually reach the Congo River at the center of the world's most important source of gem-quality diamonds. Yet the Provoto capital Tashipa betrays nothing of the wealth that lies beneath the ground. None of the roads are paved. not even the airport runway. Hundreds of miners, aka victims of capitalism and colonialism, die every year in tunnel collapses that are seldom reported because they happen so often, because nobody cares about the victims of capitalism and capitalism's misery. Teachers at government schools demand payment from students to supplement their meager salaries. Many parents choose to send their teenagers to the mines instead. We do this work so we can find something they'll let us eat, he says. When I find a stone, I eat. There's no money left for school. The victim of capitalism and Rodriguez are on the opposite ends of a $81.4 billion a year industry that links the mines of Africa, home to 65% of the world's diamonds, with sparkling sales room of high-end jewelry retailers around the world. In 2003, the diamond industry established the Kimberley process, an international certification system designed to reassure customers that the diamonds they bought were conflict-free. But under capitalism, there is no cruelty-free products, so this was a 100% fraud and lie. Again, it remains riddled with loopholes, unable to stop many diamonds mined in war zones or under exploitation circumstances, or, from being sold in the international capitalist market. Given the ugly realities of the diamond business, Rodriguez eventually did settle to purchase a synthetic alternative to a diamond. Rubies are a symbol of love and luxury, yet the reality of rubies couldn't be any more different. Some 40% of the world's rubies lie in one mining concession in Mozambique, where a troubling pattern of violence and death contradicts the claim of cruelty-free. In the 7 years since the ruby deposits were first discovered in Monopez in northern Mozambique, locals say there have been forced off their own land, armed robberies and violence have soared as spectators have flocked to the area, and a growing number of small-scale miners have been beaten or shot. Some say miners have even been buried alive. Indigenous and Asian slaves were the lifeblood of Western Australia's early pearl industry. A pearl is a hard, glistening object produced within the soft tissues, specifically the mantle of a living shelled mollusk or another animal, such as the fossil ceratoids. Pearls are stolen from living beings, oysters, who are exploited and murdered for profits. For hundreds of years, men and women have put their lives on the line for the pearl shell and pearls, just as they did for gold, diamonds, opals, and other treasures snatched from the earth. The first mother-of-pearl shell was commercially harvested in Shark Bay in the 1860s. The rich shell beds are close to the shore, were dragged with wire nets, and the shell was bundled into poggy pots where it was left to rot. That way, any pearls hidden within would tumble to the bottom of the pot and be collected. Numerous police and government reports record in graphic detail explain how Aboriginal people were forced to work as drivers, swimming without any equipment from pearl logger boats. Slave traders were known as blackbirders and would round up Aboriginal men at gunpoint and sell them to pearling captains. These skin divers face peril every day, coming against sharks, crocodiles, sea snakes, and storms, but with no medical help for over 800 kilometers or a week's sail away. Even a tooth abscess or an infected cut on a coral could prove deadly. Huge quantities of shell were hauled in, and Broome became Boomtown, producing 80% of the world's mother-of-pearl shell. Madagascar supplies 40% of the world's sapphire gems, pink, yellow, blue, or purple. These stones were dug up and sold illegally. $100 million worth of sapphires and other gems were smuggled out of Madagascar in the year of 1999 alone, with those doing the hardest job and being exploited earning the least and taking the most risk of their lives. In the region, several dozen miners suffocate to death each year, particularly during the rainy seasons. A rush for Madagascar's gemstones is exacerbating destruction of a critical wildlife habitat biodiversity area. Madagascar has the highest rate of biodiversity on Earth after Brazil and Indonesia. It has 300 species of reptiles and 300 of amphibians, 99% of them found nowhere else. Madagascar is the only place on the planet that is home to wild lemurs. Fully 113 species and newest identified just last year. Now conservationists and primatologists are gravely concerned about the future and the effects of gem mining on the remaining lemur habitat, as much as 90% of which has been lost to tree clearing for mining and farming. When it comes to exploitation in these industries, crafting gems and jewelry into fine pieces for the commercial market is a process also tainted by exploitation. Children in India may be forced to toil for long hours. These children sustain injuries working with sharp tools, hot and often heavy equipment. Painful cuts to the hands are common from using this sharp equipment or from pushing stones against sandy machines with their bare fingers. Their hand bones are still growing and may become deformed from the repetitive tasks involved with this. For much of her childhood, a victim of capitalism, Anna spent 12 hours a day polishing gemstones. Like many others in the slum of Jaipur, India, she had few choices but to help provide for her family. The little her father earned was spent on asthma medication, so Tirana endured the tiring and painful work at the expense of her own health and education.
The invasion of Libya, but everyone was convinced that it was all about currency. Specifically, Gaddafi's plan to introduce the gold dinar, a single African currency made from gold that would eventually replace the US dollar when trading with Africa. Many scholars have said that it's the kind of thing that one has to plan almost in secret and launch it when ready, because as soon as you say it, you'll have a bullseye on your back. You see, the world relies on the US dollar, giving America unparalleled economic dominance. Nearly 90% of all international currency transactions are in dollars. 60% of foreign exchange reserves are held in dollars, and almost 40% of the world's debt is issued in US dollars. Prevention of the creation of the independent hard currency in Africa that would have freed the continent from its economic bondage. To give some quick context, it is banks, not governments, that create most of the money in Western economy.
Ghana in Africa is one of the world's top 10 gold producers. Many traders and refineries prefer to source gold from Ghana. Companies that do buy gold from Ghana are benefiting from the hazardous child labor that goes on in these industries. Around 1/3 of Ghana's gold is mined in small-scale mines and exported at a trade value well above $1 billion per year. Thousands of children work in Ghana's gold mines in hazardous conditions. Most children are only 15 years old to 17 years old, but younger children often do work in mining too. The youngest child interviewed by the Human Rights Watch was only 9 years old. They work anything from a few hours to 14 hours a day pulling the gold out of the shafts, carrying heavy loads of ore and crushing it. Children wash the ore in a sludge, a board, and pan it. Finally, they work with mercury, a highly toxic metal, by aligning it with gold and then burning the alum to separate out the gold. Children working with gold are often exposed to high levels of mercury. Mercury attacks in the central nervous system can cause a lifelong disability, including brain damage and even death. Mercury is particularly harmful to children, but it is readily available in some gold trading shops and provided by gold traders to child laborers. Children suffer numerous health consequences from mining work, and the heavy lifting causes extreme pain in the back, head, neck, joints, and arms, and can lead to lifelong-term spinal damage. Some children suffer from respiratory diseases as the result of the dust produced from crushing ore. Children have been injured in mine collapses when working with sharp tools and during other incidents and accidents. In April 2013, a 17-year-old boy was killed by a mudslide at a mine. While the majority of children working in mines are boys, girls are there too to do other jobs on mining sites. such as selling food or other items. They face additional risk of sexual harassment, sexual exploitation, sex trafficking, human trafficking, sexual assault, and rape. Canada mining firm compensates Papua New Guinea tribal woman after alleged sexual assaults and rapes in the area. The 11 women who were aged between 14 years old and to their late 80s when the alleged crimes took place are among the 137 local women and girls who had previously been compensated by Barrick Gold Corporation after allegations of sexual violence, including gang rape and imprisonment, by armed security forces and guards and police officers at the mine. But 11 of the women initially refused the compensation and had argued that the compensation on average converted to American dollars, which amounted to a little over $8,000, was not adequate to remedy the multiple and continuing traumas and post-traumatic stress disorder they had suffered. One, who was 14 at the time of the alleged rape in 2010, said what happened to her halted her education and ruined her reputation and chance at marriage in her own culture. Grasberg Mine in the Indonesian region has become a source of untold wealth for its owners, but the local communities that are living around this area in West Papua say it has brought poverty and fascist police state oppression. Grasberg Mine, one of the biggest gold mines and the third largest copper mine in the world, majority owned by the American mining firm Freeport McMoran. Grasberg is now Indonesia's biggest taxpayer, with reserves of an estimated $100 billion. 500,000 West Papuans have been killed and genocided in their fight for self-rule in those areas. Decades of military intervention and fascist police state oppression, kidnapping, and torture have created a long-standing culture of fear. Local and foreign journalists are routinely banned, detained, beaten, and forced to face trial on thumped-up charges. Undercover police regularly tail indigenous religions, social and political leaders, and children still in primary school have been jailed and arrested for taking part in demonstrations calling for independence from fascist police state Indonesia. Today, indigenous tribes such as Kamato and the Amuyugan claim their communities have been wrecked with poverty, disease, oppression, and environmental degradation and destruction since the mine had begun operations in 1973. Near mining, motions to the river opposite, languishing green and motionless. It claims that tailing sediment from the mine has raised the riverbed, suffocating the fish, oysters, and shrimp on which the native indigenous diet and economy are traditionally based. A 2012 report from Earthworks and Mining Watch Canada asserts that mine waste from Grasberg has buried over 166 square kilometers of formerly productive forests and wetlands, and fish have largely disappeared in the area. And to top it off, abandoned mine operations can leach iron and other toxic radioactive chemicals such as copper, lead, mercury into nearby waterways. Mining tailings are the materials left behind after the economically valuable fraction of the material has been extracted. These materials are often stored in large tailing dams to prevent environmental damage and destruction, as tailings are often radioactive, biohazards, and toxic and acidic. Tailings consist of valuable substances used in the extraction processes such as cyanide, mercury, arsenic. Estimates from Earthworks suggest that Freeport dumps as much as 200,000 tons of mine waste, known as tailings, directly into the Ashawa Delta system every single day. The practice has devastated the environment in the surrounding areas, according to Earthworks and locals in the community, turning thousands of acres of verdant forests and mangroves into wastelands. When it comes to diamond mining in Zimbabwe, there have been reports of livestock deaths and human health crisis issues, as well as as well along the Ozidi River. Environmentalists believe that furoscon, a toxic substance, is released via dense medium separation processes. Mercury, used in gold mining, bioaccumulates in the environment and up the food chain and poses developmental, hormonal, neurological threats to wildlife. Amphibians may be at particular risk to mercury contamination given their current global decline and extinction rates. Their skin exposure to aquatic environments during certain life stages. Their eggs make amphibians sensitive to environmental contaminants, including metals. Fish are also highly vulnerable to the mercury contamination and experience negative effects on developmental growth, sex hormone production, reproduction, and behavior when exposed to heavy metal mercury poisoning in laboratory studies. Heavy metals cause oxidative stress in plants. Metal stress was reported to affect photosynthesis. For instance, copper inhibits photosynthesis and reproductive processes. Lead reduces chlorophyll production, while arsenic interferes with metabolic processes. Consequently, for the plant's growth is reduced or basically impossible. The impact of mining operations on the surrounding land and areas is also closely linked to the ecological setting of the mining sites. For example, the deforestation and biodiversity loss of primary forests caused by mining for iron ore in the tropical rainforest of Gabon is likely to leave more of a devastating impact and longer-term ecological damage and destruction compared to mining the same thing in the deserts of northern Australia. The destruction of vegetation and soil when land is cleared for mining results in the release of carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and other greenhouse gases that cause the climate change crisis caused by capitalism. For example, mining a kilogram of diamond produces 800,000 kilograms of CO2 compared to a kilogram of highly abundant minerals such as iron, which produces only about 2 kilograms of CO2. In a camping tent in the Peruvian jungle, four scientists crowded around a tiny patient, an Amazonian rodent. A small-eared pygmy rice rat. After it was put to sleep from anesthesia, they gently pulled some hairs to go back with the tweezers and check to see if the hairs bundled into a tiny plastic bag. They would be carried to a lab, a biological station for testing to determine whether the rat is yet another victim of mercury poisoning and contamination in the areas. Their data showed mercury contamination from gold mining making its way up into the biodiversity hotspots mammals, from rodents to ocelots to TT monkeys. Out of the 330 primate samples tested so far, virtually all showed mercury contamination in some form, and in some cases the levels were astoundingly high. Study biologists. Some diamond mining operations take place in coastal areas or offshore. This involves marine dredging or seabed mining. These activities can disrupt marine ecosystems, damage coral reefs, and disturb coastal habitats. More true crime cases involving minerals, jewelry, or gold, etc. Gold from the American River. Samuel Branton walked up and down the streets of San Francisco holding up a bottle of pure gold dust. His triumphant announcement and the discovery of gold at nearby Sutter's Mill in 1848 ushered in a new era for the California, one in which millions of settlers and colonizers rushed to the little-known frontier in a wild race for riches, aka the Gold Rush. It meant pure disaster for the state's peaceful indigenous native population. In just 20 years, when the gold rush was happening, 80% of California's indigenous native population were wiped out, and though some died because of the seizure of their land or diseases caught from new settlers, between 9,000 and 16,000 people were murdered in cold blood, the victims of a policy of genocide sponsored by the state of California and gleefully assisted by its newest colonizer citizens. An estimated 100,000 people died during the first 2 years of the gold rush alone. By 1873, only 30,000 indigenous people remained of the 150,000 people. The state spent a total of about $1.7 million, a staggering sum of money today, to murder up to 16,000 people. When it comes to Aboriginal Australia, for many of Victoria's first peoples, the gold rush represented a second wave of dispossession. As settlements spread over the interior, Aboriginal Australian people were further displaced from the land, their camping sites and hunting grounds destroyed, and their waterways were polluted. Creeks and streams became muddied, polluted sites from the mining. Timber was destroyed, and native wildlife and biodiversity was hunted and shot. Forced from the land that sustained them, Aboriginal Australian families, communities suffered from widespread disease and depression. Birth rates fell drastically, reported only 25 births between 1843 and 1858. The Chinese miners also in these areas were also disliked because they would work for longer hours and at cheaper pay. This is disliked by the other miners because it sometimes lost them their jobs or prevented them from getting a job as a miner. In a few gold fields, the Chinese miners were attacked because of the European miners were jealous. A lawsuit that came out, Sterling Jewelers, the American diamond empire that owns Jared and Kay Jewelers, has agreed to pay $175 million to settle a class action lawsuit alleging that the company had for years discriminated against tens and thousands of women in their pay and promotion practices. The case was filed in 2008, became the hallmark of the #MeToo movement activism after some of the women revealed to the Washington Post in 2017 that they had been pressured to cater to their boss's sexual advances and demands to get promoted or stay employed. The class was composed of about 68,000 women who had worked mostly as sales associates in the jewelry stores between 2004 and 2018.